So the OHL playoffs, the first round is slowly coming to an end, which means this upcoming Friday we have the OHL priority selection, which it seems like it's coming up pretty quick. We've got Jordan Malette from Puck Preps Ontario joining us to talk a bit about the players that are going to be selected in this upcoming draft. Jordan, you must have put in a lot of miles preparing for this draft.
Yeah, I won't lie, it's quite the project for one person to try to narrow down like the 50 U16 AAA teams down into like a cohesive top 100 or so. So yeah, it's quite the project and yeah, borderline insane for me to do this all, but we've made it and here we are and I have some, thoughts of players I like and how things will shape up, but yeah, it's quite the project.
Well, it's kind of handy because for myself, covering the Barrie Colts on a day in, day out basis, I don't get a chance to prepare too much for the draft itself. So you were at the OHL Cup. I was following along with your updates. Your take, who stood out for you at that tournament?
Yeah, I mean, there was a few like ones that really surprised me of guys that have just been trending in the right direction in the second half of the year. And the two for me were Caleb Malhotra and Pierce Mabui on the Toronto Marlboros. Malhotra's on the Vaughan Kings, but those two are ones that just like blew my expectations out of the water and have just been playing really well in the second half of the season. Of course, Ethan Belch has won the MVP. He's been the talk of the town over the past couple weeks. He obviously played well, but I think those two, Malhotra and Mabui, especially like how well they've been playing over the past 6 weeks or so really are the two that stood out to me as guys like, oh wow, like I really need to bump you up my rankings as I'm working on tweaking my final list. So there's lots of guys that played well. It was, there was 50 games of hockey over the week, so lots of guys I could talk about, but those are the two that really stood out to me.
And Caleb Malhotra, of course, his dad played in the National Hockey League, so that's a name that for a lot of fans, I'm sure, familiar with because with the OHL, when you start seeing the kids of the players who've played at the pro leagues come up, it's you kind of take a little more notice of those players. So for Malhotra, how different of a game does he play from his dad when he was in the NHL?
Well, I mean, don't want to age myself too much, but Manny Malhotra, I can't say I remember too much about his game. Like I remember like the face-off specialist depth sort of centerman role in his game. But in terms of Caleb, there is a little bit of that two-way play, but really it is like high octane offense, skill, playmaking. So I don't think it's quite the same as his dad, bringing a little bit more skill and goal scoring to the mix. But I'm sure Manny at age 16, 15 was quite the talented player and kind of settled into that face-off depth centerman specialist role. But in terms of Caleb, yeah, he's like a really good skater, really good playmaker, and just kind of brings everything to the table. And he's someone that I think has grown like an insane amount over the season, is just sort of starting to settle into his body and things are starting to come together. But he's someone that's really impressed over the past couple weeks.
And that Oakville team also having a good run at the OHL Cup. Who on that team kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, so Belchet's the big one. If Oakville's scoring, it's usually Belchez like being in and around the net, finishing off the sequence. He's 6'5", 200 and something pounds. So you kind of get what you kind of know what I'm getting at with that one. He's really good around the net, good in the corners, and kind of be that power forward sort of build. Callum Croskery is their number one defenseman. He is tendered to the Chicago Steel, the USHL, so kind of a tricky one there on draft day to try to forecast where he's going to go, but he's really good puck mover, kind of just involved in everything from the back end. In terms of forwards, Evan Hedrick had a really good week. He's a personal favorite of mine to root for. I think he's 5'7" and just like an energizer bunny on the ice, always nonstop going, making things happen in transition, and just like plays with so much speed. Of course, being 5'7", there's some projection concerns there, but he's someone that it's easy to root for of just that nonstop like rambunctious speed and quickness to his game.
And we kind of see that at the OHL level too, where guys are under 6 foot, and the NHL scouts are taking a longer look. I'm thinking of a guy like Bo Gelsma with the Barrie Colts, who hasn't yet got that NHL contract, but he might not be the tallest player out on the ice, but still, these guys they can have the wheels and they can find ways that help them to stand out in their game at the junior hockey ranks.
Yeah, you can make up for size in other ways. Like I think of the 2023 class with Evan Malkasian. He's someone who went in the seventh round, I think, to London. He was someone that's undersized, but I always thought, he makes up for it from being able to like spin from pressure and just be smart about where he's going in the corners and get away from checks and stuff. And you can definitely make up for it with like quickness and like how you move off players and how you kind of angle yourself to avoid checks and stuff. So it's definitely not like you're not just written off, right? There's still hope. It's not as easy as, oh, you're just 5'7", throw you aside. There still is like ways you can make up for those deficiencies and bring other things to the table.
And the OHL had their draft lottery now almost 2 weeks ago, and we found out the Windsor Spitfires are going to select first overall. Do you feel that Belchez might have that top spot, or does he have challengers when it comes to number one overall?
It seems like it'll be Belches. If you're asking me, I currently have Adam Valentini as my number one. I just think he kind of has that well-rounded number one center playmaking sort of build to his game where I go, yeah, I want to take that guy and build around him. It does seem like Belches will go number one, which, I understand why, but if it was me, I think I would be leaning Adam Valentini, who seems to be who might go second, but we're still trying to figure out. There's still a lot of surprises to come, but yeah, it seems like Belch has one and Valentini may be the front runner to go second.
And we've heard a lot about Valentini this season. He's been one of those consistent players in this age group. What from his game has stood out the most to you?
I think he's somebody that when you watch him play has like that high end like motor, doesn't stop moving and just is so efficient with the puck. Like he's not someone that needs the puck on his stick all game long to add value. It's like I'm gonna just make short little quick passes to my teammates, make everyone better, and kind of get the puck up the ice efficiently. So it's yeah, I would call him the opposite of like a puck hog that just goes end to end every shift, but just so smart about his decisions that can make everybody around him better and make everything tick on a line. So when you kind of start talking about a player like that, it's like, oh yeah, you can really build around a guy like that, make everybody around him better and make everything work on a line. So yeah, when I start describing guys like that, it's like, yeah, it's hard for me to not put you number one when we're talking about, yeah, he makes everybody better and he can drive a line. So yeah, that's why he sits number one on my board.
Well, that sounds like a great pickup if he is at number two for the Sarnia Sting. And then you've got Sarnia and Windsor, of course, in the same division. So it's going to be fascinating to see if those are the top two picks, how they're going to pan out in their junior years.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see them go toe to toe. I mean, still anything can happen, I guess. Like we don't.
Mhm.
It seems like Belches will go one. After that, it's a little bit of a question mark, but we'll see what happens. But it would be interesting to see them go head to head for the next 4 or so years.
And also another player that we've heard a bit about throughout the season is Wason. He's been a guy that at times has been considered maybe a number one, but could he still be a top three? Is that on your list?
Yeah, he sits at number three on mine, and I expect him to probably go number three or shortly, maybe four, but I would think three is probably a good bet. All the offensive skill in the world kind of has that dangle out of anything sort of skill to his game. There still is some question marks about kind of rounding things out and adding new layers to his game. But kind of the opposite of Valentini, where it's he can go end to end and dangle through everybody and score that way. Whereas, Valentini has a little more like playmaking and more projectable angle to his game, but in terms of like wow factor, Wassland definitely is an exciting player.
And what's also been neat this year is the Barrie Colts under 16. They've been, very competitive this year. And I have personally haven't had a chance to go see them in person, but I know you have been able to. So that Barrie Colts team, can we talk a little bit about them?
Yeah, they're fascinating. A little subplot that kind of makes me bitter is that two of their top players are from Ottawa, so they moved there away from my backyard, and that's been, always been bugging me all year that they stole two of my top players. But yeah, they have four really top players that I think are in first round conversation. Three that I would probably bet are first round picks, and a fourth that, maybe flirting with that first round. But those four guys really drive the bus when you watch the Colts, as well as there's Brock Shitteroni who's playing up. That's a 2009. So I would say those five players are the ones that are really, really high end on the Colts. There's other guys that, I expect to be second, third, later picks, but those four guys are the ones you really want to talk about that maybe a consideration at fifth overall for the Colts, maybe not, but they're definitely worthy players in that conversation.
And yeah, as you touched on it there, the Barrie Colts, they do have that fifth overall pick. So I'm sure for the fans, it'd be kind of nice to see some homegrown talent play on the Barrie Colts. But for what you've got on your rankings, who do you think would be a good fit at that number five spot?
It's so hard to tell. I think just like the other part of this all is that there's so many players that are saying they might go NCAA. They might, all the rumors are flying of who's going to be available at fifth, who's willing to come. Like all that stuff makes this so hard to predict who the Colts, one, will have the option of picking, and two, if they want to come. But to me, like two of the Barry Colts would be high on my list to choose at fifth. Nathan Amedovski being one and Alex McLean being the other. Amedovski, I think, of the like 6'2" scoring wingers in the class, he's the one with like the best small area skill, the best mobility. Like I always say that he's kind of has the skill and the movement of a 5'9" player, but in the frame of a 6'2" player, which is very unique of a player that can move at that size, and everything should just keep getting better and better and better as he adds muscle and matures. McLean, a little bit different, but one of the better like playmakers in the class, really good at freeing up pucks along the wall, forechecking well, winning possession in the offensive zone, and finding ways to get pucks from the boards to the front of the net to his teammates. So a bit of a different blend there between the two. But you know, if they take one of their two players with the Barry Colts, those would be solid selection. Then you have, you know, guys on the Vaughn Kings that you could come in there, guys on other teams, but those are two that I have it. I have those two at 5 and 6. So definitely worthy considerations there for the Colts at fifth.
And we're hearing a lot of the offensive talent for this year's draft. How is the defense looking for this upcoming draft?
It's to begin with, it's already definitely a forward heavy draft. And as of now, I think four of my top 10 defensemen have either committed or rumored to be committed to play outside the OHL. So that has already made things really complicated with guys going to the BCHL, guys going to the USHL. So who knows if someone like Zach Neiman might go to the right team and they may change his mind and he may be willing to report. But there is good defensemen. There are just a few of the top ones are not willing, apparently, to commit to the OHL, which makes things a little bit complicated. So, especially at fifth overall, it may be an interesting spot to take a defenseman if some of those top guys aren't willing to commit. You may be better off. I don't know where Barry picks in the second round. You may be better off waiting till that early second round range to finding your guy. But there is players. It's just, you know, a lot of them have committed elsewhere, which makes things not so easy.
So you've been now tracking this group since September. You've been going to all the rinks, to all the games. We've heard some of the top names that are expected to be drafted on Friday, but what are some other players for you that maybe aren't getting as much of attention or might get picked a little later that could surprise some people?
I'll just scroll down my list and see what stands out to me. I think Dima Jilkin is one who gets some attention. He may go in the early second round. So still not like a late pick that's going to surprise somebody. When I watch him, he kind of gives me like Luca Pinelli sort of thoughts of not the biggest guy, not the best skater, but really smart, really crafty. And, you know, at 5'8", 5'9", like Pinelli does, he's one of the better players in the league, right?
Yeah.
And like when you start having that thought in your mind, it's like, yeah, that guy could really be a good piece we want to add. If I scroll down a bit more, someone like Ryland Cunningham with Peterborough, he has just grown on me as the season's going on more and more and more. One of the better like players along the boards, off the cycle, making stuff happen like on the forecheck and just sort of that small area cycle game. Uh, let's see. Blake Barnes is one that I see. I don't think anybody talking about except for myself. He's a defenseman out of Lambton who isn't the best team, so he may be a little bit underlooked down there. One of the more like just like simple, smart, can move defenseman that I think if you're looking for a fifth, sixth defenseman, he's not quite the most like physically imposing player, but in terms of like getting pucks out of his end with control, finding ways to break out and kind of just playing that simple game of how do we just prevent the puck getting in our net, I think he's quite good at. And then, you know, there's plenty of other names I could go through. After like pick 30 or 40, there's so many guys I can see cases to be made that they just bring a little bit different. So if you're after like goal scoring or physical play or whatever you're after, you can definitely find your guy. There's plenty of options.
And one last spot is the goaltending. We haven't touched on that yet. Are there any goaltenders that are standing out? I know for this year, one rookie goalie was Jack Ivankovic. Everyone has been loving his play in Mississauga. Could we be seeing another goaltender that could maybe surprise a team or two?
You're hitting me on the blank spot of my knowledge here.
Oh no.
I do know, yeah, Mateo Bates actually with the Barrie U16 program. He represented Canada at the Youth Olympics back in January. Um, yeah, goalies unfortunately are just something that I don't pretend to know what I'm talking about. I don't pay attention. Yeah, I stay
That's
away.
okay.
Um, but Mateo Bates, I think, is among the two, and I believe the other one is on Vaughn, that both represented Canada at the Youth Olympics. So I would expect them to be among the top two selected. But in terms of hype of the Jack Ivankovic level, I would say probably not. But yeah, goalies are not my area of expertise.
Yeah, and with goalies, you just never know. And it's always going to be interesting to see how this draft plays out. And for you, once the draft is over, you're going to take a bit of a break before hitting the road again in September.
So the provincials for the U15 are actually 10 minutes away from my house, and they start 3 days after the draft. So not much of a break there, and we'll just start learning about the next crop of kids. We've already started a bit kind of looking at the U15s, but when the provincials are in my backyard, it's hard to pass up on that opportunity, even though I'm looking for a break after draft day.
Well, never a dull moment, it seems, for you, Jordan. And Jordan, thanks for doing this. And it's going to be fun to see how this draft all plays out.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
So that's Jordan Malette from Puck Preps Ontario. He actually just posted his final draft rankings for the 2024 OHL Priority Selection. Highly recommend going to check that out if you want to become more familiar with some of the top names that will be called on Friday. And of course, the Windsor Spitfires, they do have the first overall pick, and we'll see if it is Belchess who is selected first overall. And then, of course, Sarnia, then they're going to pick number 2. The Peterborough Petes have the third overall selection. Niagara will pick 4th. And then the Barrie Colts, they do have the 5th overall pick. It's going to be fun to see where all the names fall. And then we get ready for the 2024-25 regular season to start at the end of August with all the new names and faces. But we do have the playoffs to wrap up in the first round. And stay tuned. I will have some second round playoff preview videos probably starting tomorrow with Saginaw and Sault Ste. Marie. And we'll go from there. So again, thank you very much for tuning in. I love seeing the growth on the channel. And if you've made it this far, why not click subscribe? And then you're going to be updated with all the videos coming out between now and the end of the playoff season. So again, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you again soon.